how are you able to use your memorization techniques and also be put into such a high pressure environment or situation?
Yeah. So the show this year was a Super Brain show in China. 400 million people watched that show, which that's 3 times the amount of people that watch the Super Bowl, like, for context. There's over 1 billion people in China, and this is, like, the most popular game show in the world, which, Americans don't know about. That's okay. It's in Chinese, but, um, uh, I was asked to memorize 100 different random objects, like props from the show, like glass of water, a painting, a Rubik's Cube. Each item was placed in a locker. So I had to memorize the locker number from 1 to 100 that each item was placed in. That was the easy part, by the way. And then each locker had a 4-digit code that the judge would lock, like randomly make a code for each locker, 4-digit codes for all the lockers. That's what I had to memorize, which piece of cake, right? In front of 400 million people. Pretty easy. So, yeah, the performance part, to answer your question, that comes over time. And one thing that I do that's completely opposite of other people, most people, like, relates to focus. So we're taught, and people are obsessed with blocking out distractions, right? To focus, I need to block out my distractions, be in this flow state. What that actually does is that conditions you to resist distractions. So people are like, the moment a distraction comes up, they get ticked off and they get reactive, and then they can't focus, right? Because they're in this inflamed state. So and this helps with anxiety and panic attacks too, which I suffered from, is I embrace distractions. I allow everything in. Like, when I was on stage, to be completely honest, in front of 400 million people, I was like 3/4 of the way through, in my vision, all of a sudden I was like, couldn't calculate what I was seeing. I was feeling faint, like I almost dropped to the floor. I hadn't eaten that much that day, and it was so hot in there. I was in a suit, like this cocktail of stuff. My arches of my feet started cramping. And in that moment, like, I could have freaking panicked. I could have ran, I could have collapsed, I could have fainted, but I was like, okay, allow this in. I feel my body going crazy. I need water and to relax. And I allowed all of that to happen, and I kept going and finished strong, right? But my training is I allow everything in. Like, internally, I don't push things away. If I'm mad, I allow myself to be mad. If I'm nervous, I allow myself to be nervous. I don't, because the moment you push it away, that creates resistance, and that actually amplifies it. And so when I'm training, quite literally for a US championship, most people will put on earmuffs to block the noise. They'll get nice and quiet upstairs in their room and practice in the quiet. F that. I do the opposite. I will put a loud podcast in my ear. I'll do 20 push ups, holding my breath as fast as I can, and I'll pop up, press play on the podcast, press start on the timer, and start memorizing. So, like, instantly, my heart rate's going crazy. I'm out of breath. My mind is going, I don't want to do this. This is highly uncomfortable. The podcast is in my ear, right? So all these stimulus are going on, and I practice not pushing that away, not trying to block it out, but just bringing my awareness to what I'm doing. Well, and just, I'm aware of all the craziness that's going on. I can listen. I don't want to, but I can hear the podcast still going on. I let it happen, and I bring my attention back. And that is very helpful for not just performance, but for anxiety, for panic, because you're allowing the stuff in that wants to be seen and felt. Let's talk about the present moment for a second. The present moment is chaotic sometimes. Like, people have this idea, like, if I'm more present, I'll be more at peace. You can be, but it's more at peace with what's happening, like not resisting reality. Because reality can be monkey mind sometimes. Reality can be intense emotions sometimes, but that's a human experience. And we got to stop pushing that away. So the present moment is beautiful in that you can make all the change, and everything you need right now is right here, right now. Um, but it took me, I started training in 20, like, I started training this way probably in 2017, 2016. And, what are we at, 2024? So 8 years of training like this and trying to cultivate it.
Yeah, I know that practicing mindfulness and staying in the present moment, that has been very beneficial. So,
Yeah.
what led you to create a business for yourself, and how were you able to overcome the anxiety and the panic attacks?
Yeah. Well, when I started a business, it was back in 2012. I failed, to be honest, I failed probably my first 4 or 5 businesses. The problem was me. When I realized that, I look back, I'm like, "What?" Obviously, I kept giving up and changing, but the problem was these patterns in me, self-sabotaging behaviors, procrastination, overwhelm, anxiety, mental paralysis, right? And I couldn't put myself forward like I am now. Like I'm just here on a podcast in front of hundreds, thousands of people, right? Just speaking. I couldn't have done that back then because I didn't have that. But why? The problem was all of this suppressed emotion, internal resistance was preventing me from expanding, right? So it wasn't the business plan, it wasn't the strategy. I knew what I needed to do, but I wasn't doing it. So fast forward to now, what I realized is there's so much there's so many people seeking motivation. Like, and I did this too. I got to listen to this podcast. I got to listen to this video to pump myself up, to get myself in the mode, right? Tony Robbins type of style. That's not helpful if you have subconscious suppressed patterns, right? Like anxiety. I was having anxiety. I was waking up in dread and heavy and heart palpitations, all these things. Mentally freezing up. Like I would just like be a deer in the headlights. So the issue wasn't the business, the issue wasn't the strategy, the issue was me, right? So now I take responsibility for that and go inward. Okay. The problem with the current approaches to anxiety and panic attacks are they're treated as mental health. This is an emotional root issue. It shouldn't be labeled mental health. It should be emotional health. I mean, there's a mixture. The mental conditioning is what holds it in. So they're related, but the root is emotional. We have deeply suppressed emotions from our life that we have pushed away, that we have suppressed, that are it's energy. Like it's actually a good thing that it's in us because when it's released and integrated into us, we expand. We don't need a Tony Robbins. We don't need a mindset coach. We don't need the meditations to make us expand. We naturally expand when we access that stuff. When I started going inward and realizing this is an emotional issue, John, like let's go into this. Let's feel these emotions, which a left brain person doesn't know how to do, by the way. I was like, what do you mean feel emotion? What's the step by step process? What do I do? Right. This is a more of a feminine process. Feminine, not meaning girl, but feminine meaning the energy inside of you that's feminine, right? We all have a balance of that. So I had to access that feminine side and be in my emotions and learn how to do that because when I did, this stuff released. And when it released for good. Like it didn't come back. It integrated and I just expand, expand, expand. So now what I do is I help people with panic attacks, anxiety, overcoming that for good. Like not giving you strategies and tips and band-aids and meditations. I'm actually let's go to the root of this because I learned how to do it myself. I'm not against meditation, but I want you to hear me clearly on this, so everyone listening. If you are suffering from anxiety or in a really nasty spiral or depression or panic, focusing on your breath or focusing on a guided meditation is actually harmful because you're bypassing what you need to experience to release it, right? So there's nothing wrong with listening to guided meditation or calming down, but if you're in it, if you're in dread and this stuff, you have to know that the only way through this is to feel that emotion fully and to learn how to access these suppressed emotions to release them. Otherwise, you're just going to keep perpetuating, right? So that was a really key distinction for me. Is like guided meditations, focusing on your breath is actually harmful. Talk therapy, cognitive therapy is actually harmful if you want to get to the root because you're mentating and you're actually strengthening old neural pathways that strengthen those, resistances. So like Xanax isn't going to get to the root. It's going to numb it, numb your ability to handle this. Talk therapy, traditional meditations are actually, if you are in deep anxiety, chronic anxiety, daily anxiety, panic, will not help get to the root, will not help you release it for good. That was eye opening for me because, again, this is an emotional root issue.
Yeah, I find that society, they continue to tell us to push down our emotions, right? And not feel them. And I think that's part of the issue, a huge part of the issue. Hey guys, I would like to take a moment to introduce you to our app, Yoga Plus. You will have access to an incredible selection of videos led by top instructors in yoga, fitness, nutrition, and so much more. Download our Yoga Plus app available on iOS and Android today.